2023 is closing out as a milestone year for SpaceX. 2 launches of Starship, 5 launches of Falcon Heavy, 100 launches of Falcon 9, 3 of them with crew on board, and over 5,000 Starlink satellites currently in operation. But all of this is just a small sign of even bigger things to come for SpaceX. 2024 is where things really start to get crazy. Obviously, the biggest story of the year in the world of spaceflight news is going to be the Starship. The biggest, most powerful, most technologically advanced rocket ever created was launched not once, but twice in 2023, and 2 times we watched Starship explode in mid-air before it was able to complete a full mission profile, which was awesome, but also confusing for a lot of people out there because, in spite of the fact that their rockets all blew up, SpaceX has labeled these flights as successful. For a casual observer, it might be hard to reconcile the term rapid unscheduled disassembly with a success of any kind, and that is totally fair. I don't blame people for being confused, so it's important to get some perspective on just what SpaceX was actually trying to accomplish with these test flights. April 20th, 2023, the holy day 420, SpaceX attempts the first launch of Starship. The primary goal is to get the thing into the air without blowing it up on the launch pad, because no one has ever released anywhere near this much energy from one rocket before. Take the Saturn V, also a really big rocket. This is the vehicle that sent the Apollo program to the moon, but that wasn't even half as much power as Starship. No one knew what was going to happen when SpaceX went full send on launch day, but there was only one way to find out, and we found out a lot on that first test. So, yeah, Starship did blow a giant hole in the ground at liftoff, and yes, it was actively on fire and falling apart the entire time it was ascending, and it totally did end up going wildly out of control and spun around in the air for about a minute before mercifully exploding. But these are all learning experiences, and we can see the proof of that learning in the results of Starship test number 2 on November 18th, when none of those same problems repeated themselves. Instead, we found a whole new crop of failures. The primary goal of this test was to reach stage separation. That means the upper stage ship is released from the booster and sent on its way to outer space, and this goal was achieved quite spectacularly. Hot staging is not a new technique for orbital rockets. It was used by NASA and the Soviet Union back in the 1960s, but it's not common and it's never been done on a rocket of this scale before, not successfully at least. And Starship performed the maneuver beautifully, sending the upper stage on a smooth flight well above the Kármán line and achieving spaceflight. Back to the learning experiences. Immediately following the stage separation, Starship's booster attempted a flip maneuver and a boost back burn to send the rocket on a return trajectory for the Gulf of Mexico. This is the exact same procedure that the Falcon 9 booster uses for a ground landing, so SpaceX has some experience in the field, but the immense size difference between a super heavy Starship booster and a Falcon 9 makes this a whole new ballpark. It's like going from an e-bike to a Harley-Davidson. There's going to be a learning curve. So the booster exploded in mid-air, but it lasted long enough for SpaceX to gather a lot of data that they will inevitably use to learn and improve. And then, of course, our ship may have successfully reached outer space, but it didn't stay up there for very long. What should have been a 90-minute coast around the world ended up being 5 minutes of acceleration, followed by a big boom and an end of mission. So what happened to the ship? Well, we don't exactly know. No one has ever tried to fly anything anywhere near that large through space before. The shuttle was a large orbiter, but you could fit most of the space shuttle inside the cargo bay of a Starship. So, again, SpaceX now has data that they can use to learn and improve for next time. The thing is that when you attempt something that's never been attempted before, the best you can do is make an uneducated guess about the outcome. The only way to know anything with certainty is to try. Some things will work the way you intended, and other things will not. So what does this mean for the future of Starship in 2024? Well, more testing and more learning, which will inevitably lead to more success, but there will always be failure along the way. It's just a game now of minimizing the bad and maximizing the good. Starship will launch again in the first quarter of 2024. That's a safe bet. The flight hardware is already constructed, it just needs finishing touches. Likely there will be improvements and iterations to be made based on the experience from November 18th. The resounding good news is that the second Starship launch did not destroy the launch pad. In fact, the new flame diverter system that was implemented following the 420 cratering incident performed exactly as it was intended. No major refurbishment of the ground systems will be required this time around, and that means SpaceX can start cutting down on the time in between Starship launches. It took 7 months between Flight 1 and Flight 2, and it could be as little as 2 months before Flight 3. It could be as little as 2 weeks after that when we see Flight number 4. 2024 is going to be a year of rapid development for the Starship program. SpaceX is going to be pushing as hard as they can to get this rocket into a position of being a viable launch platform for their next generation of Starlink satellite. And at the same time, they're going to start figuring out how to make Starship a fully reusable super heavy rocket. And that is where things are going to get interesting all over again. The spectacle of the Starship is nowhere near over. If you thought the launches were exciting, just wait until we get to the landings. Also, last call for our Black Friday sale, which ends Sunday, November 26th at midnight. We currently are offering 15% off all items in the Tesla Space merch store, including our brand new Cyberpunk-inspired Cybertruck design and our fan-favorite Excitement Guaranteed Starship launch shirt. So, head on over to shop.theteslaspace.com and use code BLACKFRIDAY at checkout for 15% off your entire order. Starship may dominate the headlines, but we also need to shout out Falcon Heavy for an epic year in 2023, with even more to come in 2024. It's been so cool to see Falcon Heavy finally doing the work that it was built to do. Prior to 2023, there had been only 4 launches of this rocket since its debut in February 2018, and in just the last year alone, the flight count has doubled. We've seen the triple-core Falcon rocket in action 4 times so far in 2023, with a 5th launch set for December 8th. This has quickly become an invaluable tool for both NASA and US Space Force. On October 13th, we saw Falcon Heavy prove itself as a deep space launch platform, sending a 2.6-ton exploration spacecraft to the near-Earth asteroid 16 Psyche. In December, Falcon Heavy will cap off the year with its first launch of the X-37B spaceplane. This is a somewhat mysterious orbital vehicle. It's owned by the Space Force, and it's a fully autonomous platform that spends very long durations in Earth orbit. Last time it was up there for over 900 days, and with the power of the Falcon Heavy, the military spaceplane will be going higher into Earth's orbit than ever before. But it's really 2024 where Falcon Heavy will shine. We have 3 historic missions to look forward to. In October 2024, Falcon Heavy is scheduled to launch the long-awaited Europa Clipper spacecraft. This will go on to the Jupiter system, where advanced scientific instruments will conduct a thorough investigation of the icy moon Europa. This is the best candidate for discovering the first life outside of the Earth. Then in November 2024, Falcon Heavy will send NASA's Viper rover to the moon. This is the first mission of the Artemis program to make contact with the lunar surface and explore the South Pole region. It's also NASA's first robotic asset on the moon in decades. Then the big one, in December 2024, Falcon Heavy is scheduled to deploy the first 2 modules of the Lunar Gateway space station. This might actually be the most exciting of the 3 because the construction of the Lunar Gateway is almost like a point of no return for NASA's Artemis program. People are going to the moon, and we're going there to stay. The Falcon 9 may not be anywhere near as exciting as its 2 larger siblings, but this rocket has made a gigantic impact on the spaceflight industry. Falcon 9 will close out 2023 with 100 orbital launches. That's about 1/3 of all Falcon 9 launches ever, and they happened in just 1 year. This rocket has been in service since 2010, and it's worth noting that Falcon 9 has passed 250 consecutive successful missions since the last failure in 2016. So in many ways, Falcon 9 is only just beginning to ramp up its capability. This is thanks to the incredible reliability and durability of the reusable booster stage of this rocket. Initially, SpaceX had hoped that a Falcon booster could be reflown 10 times. Then it was approved for 15 times. Now SpaceX is going for 20 launches and landings from one single booster. On November 4th, the most experienced booster in the SpaceX lineup, B1058, launched and landed for the 18th time. This booster began its career with the first crewed flight of the Dragon capsule in May 2020, so 18 missions in just 3.5 years. No space shuttle was ever used that frequently, and the 17th launch of B1058 was only 45 days prior to the 18th launch. In 2024, SpaceX is intending to leverage this rapid and frequent reusability to push Falcon 9 even further, targeting 144 launches in 1 year, which is an average of one Falcon 9 going to orbit every 2.5 days. Eventually, this workhorse rocket will be replaced by Starship, but that's not happening anytime soon. And until then, Falcon 9 will continue to be the world's most important rocket. SpaceX will close out 2023 by reaching a new milestone with Starlink deployments, over 5,000 satellites in operation. We've seen the capabilities of Starlink grow exponentially over the past couple of years. It went from an incredibly limited use beta program in 2021 to a global high-speed network in 2022 that was being proven as a vital communication system in an active war zone. We've also seen the capabilities of Starlink illustrated by SpaceX themselves. Remember when Falcon 9 booster landing videos were just a glitchy, pixelated mess? Well, now we get a crystal clear streaming video the whole way down. That is the Starlink V2 Mini with its optical laser communication system in action. To correspond with the increase in satellite capabilities, SpaceX has been rolling out upgrade receiver units to consumers. That latest version of the Starlink dish was just released in late 2023, and we can see the advantages of those 5,000 satellites. First-generation receiver systems needed to be mounted on the top of a pole in the middle of a field with an active tracking motor to rotate the dish around just to maintain signal. The Generation 3 dish simply comes with a kickstand. As long as it's pointed towards the sky, Starlink will function anywhere in the world. In 2024, this capability will only get better. The majority of those 144 Falcon 9 launches are going to be dedicated to deploying more Starlink V2 Mini satellites. The only problem is that even though these are referred to as mini, the upgraded units are actually bigger and heavier than previous Starlink orbiters, and that means Falcon 9 can't deploy as many satellites in one launch. The original Starlink was deployed in batches of 50 to 60 all at once. Currently, the V2 Mini is going up at around 24 per mission. This is why SpaceX is going to be moving quickly to get Starship into a place where it is viable for orbital payload. In order to effectively deploy a new constellation of full-sized Starlink V2 satellites, SpaceX needs the capabilities of Starship. No other rocket can do this job. So we are expecting the first Starship payload to be deployed in the first half of 2024, and we are almost certain that the latest iteration of the Starlink satellites will be on board for that mission. I think you can see how this all ties together. Falcon 9, Falcon Heavy, and Crew Dragon will be the core of the SpaceX business model for some time to come. But in many ways, these amazing vehicles are just placeholders for the future, and the future inevitably will be the Starship. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more content like this, please consider supporting us directly on Patreon and hit the like button. If content like this starts to perform well for us, then we can continue to make a lot more high-quality videos for you in the future.